Say team, I mean me. Alright. Everyone's cool with being streamed, by the way?
Yep.
Yeah? Cool. Just.
Also, if you change your mind, we can, like, if you're like, if you give a speech and you're like, oh, I don't want that on the internet, you're allowed to retrospectively take away your consent. Just make sure you're aware of that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure there's
I love it. I really hate it. Yeah. Right. I have to give a speech here. Okay, I've got it today. No, I know. I've got it here now. Okay. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Orange.
Orange who?
Orange, you glad that you're at New Zealand schools debating championships?
Orange, I very glad.
Welcome. Welcome to round one of the New Zealand schools debating championships. The motion is. I'm just going to scroll with my demons. This house opposes the use of facial recognition technology by New World and Hack and Save. I hope you've all taken the time to hear that while I scroll back to my other document that I have open. Fantastic. Speaking times are between 7 to 8 minutes, with POIs between the first and 7th minute. So I will clap at 1 minute, at 7 minutes, and twice at 8 minutes. We will start the round with an introduction of the judges and the speakers with your names, and pronouns if you wish, though you do not have to. For example, my name is Will, and my pronouns are he, him. The judges and speakers should introduce themselves, note their names, and their pronouns. Ask if the speakers have any further questions. Oh, this is for me to. No, don't worry. These are Can the first speaker of the affirming team please introduce themselves?
Kia ora, my name is Tyler. I'll be speaking first and doing reply. My pronouns are he, him.
Hi, my name is Nathan. I'll be doing second and my pronouns are he, him.
Kia ora, my name is Esther, she, her pronouns, and I'm speaking third.
Hi, my name is Natalie and I'm doing first and leaders.
I'm Jack, I'm doing second speaker.
Hello, my name's William. I'll be doing food speaking. My pronouns are he.
Oh, and he, him pronouns.
And
Hello, my name is Ailish. I'll be the judge for this round. I use she, her pronouns, but you can also refer to me as judge if you feel inclined.
Wait, oh no, you're right. Sorry guys, I'm really nervous. Okay. I now welcome up the first speaker of the affirming team to get this party started.
It's no secret that supermarkets don't want theft, but what needs to be made even more clear is that systems like this facial recognition that tend to unfairly target people and provoke fear within the public should not be used to deal with crime. We propose 3 key arguments for the House today. Firstly, how this tech undermines public privacy. Secondly, how facial recognition tends to be ineffective. And then thirdly, Nathan's going to talk about how this leads to an increased cost for consumers. But before all that, a few things on setup then. Firstly, what do these supermarkets want? Their key incentive is to maximise profit. They do this by retaining customers and minimising their costs. This looks like theft because when people go in and steal their goods, it ends up as a cost for the business. We agree that we should attempt to minimise these harms towards businesses, but this tech isn't the best way to pursue this. What do we prefer? We prefer a world where all this sort of tech isn't necessary at all, but we acknowledge that supermarkets want these security measures to combat crime. What should they do? They should use some sort of mixture of humans and basic technology. This looks like security guards and looks like workers watching camera footage. This is the sort of form of basic technology that we support. Note that we do not support any use of AI or this facial recognition tech. What does this facial recognition tend to look like? It looks like, firstly, they have to identify who these offenders are by checking what they see by this usually AI system and then checking it against their database. Secondly, we see that these pack and save or New World workers or people within this sort of security system have to either go and deal with the issue within the store or by sending notifications to local law enforcement. Two ways that we can win this debate. Firstly, proving that these facial security systems won't lead to a significant decrease in crime, and secondly, proving that the security measure is an overall detriment to society. On to my first argument then, on sort of the harms to public privacy by using this form of technology. Bit of context here. Within a democracy like New Zealand, everyone has a right to freedom of speech, freedom of movement, but also crucially, the right to privacy. The ways that these supermarkets violate the privacy of the public is many. Firstly, your day-to-day interactions are recorded in a database which is analysed by people and technology. This information is spread throughout thousands of people across the country in sort of terms of a nationwide database. That is to say that within Countdown, you're going to have a nationwide database of all the people who have stolen from Countdown. All of this information and the recordings of the people who engage in these forms of theft are going to be recorded, right? Ultimately, this means that people just don't like walking into a store knowing that they're going to be tracked at every step and fearful that they'll be pulled up for having done nothing wrong. Secondly, this likely is monitored by either an external tech company or separate internal body that has incentives of profit and innovation. These companies, to gain money, likely sell data to other companies that have interests within the data that they hold. For example, social media companies sell user data to advertising companies who want to get more sales. Why is this so harmful? Because people are typically uninformed. This looks like when you go onto TikTok and you sign up, you have to go through 100 pages of terms and conditions which no one wants to read. This will be the same in that supermarkets have conditions at the front door that people don't read and walk right past every day. Why is this innovation of privacy so unavoidable in the supermarket? Because everyone in society has to use the supermarket in the sense that you're able to avoid going onto TikTok and having your data sold, but everyone at the end of the day has to engage with buying their day-to-day goods and services. Ultimately, that means that you cannot avoid this form of harm to your privacy. Thirdly, then, people are approaching and investigating you. This means that when people within these stores start to walk up to you and say, hey, you've stolen this thing, they start to try to engage in forms of preventing this happening again, and they try to intimidate you so that you say that you're doing something bad. Ultimately, the harms are very many within this point. People feel upset at the supermarkets. Privacy is undermined, and when New World and Pack and Save start to do it, other companies and corporations will start to do it as well. This is because someone else did it, but also because they want to minimise the crime. Ultimately, they want to try to do this, and they don't necessarily understand all the harms that are incorporated. The impacts here is that people distrust in their institution. This means that you start to have more paranoia and buy into conspiracy, like when you're walking down the street, you think that the pigeons are watching you. Ultimately, people cannot have faith in these institutions that are meant to serve them when they do nothing to help the people. I'll take a point if you have one. Moving on. On my second point then, on how this facial recognition technology is inaccurate and ineffective. A bit of context that we need to understand for this point to work. Currently in the world, AI facial recognition tech is prone to making lots of mistakes and misidentifying people. This can be seen on a day-to-day basis where Face ID on a smartphone can let in your sibling, and it goes all the way up to the very highest level with the most expensive tech in the world, which note New World and Pack and Save just don't have the access to, such as the Israeli military AI system like Lavender and Gospel, which misidentifies civilians as Hamas members, and at least in the very best situation is 10% inaccurate. We tell you that these companies cannot get the same form of accuracy that this gets, and even in the worst case, it's very bad. Firstly, this AI technology is not fully developed and often makes mistakes, such as those detailed before. When a smartphone requires 5 seconds of focus to identify one face, we say that an AI, like a supermarket looking at hundreds of thousands of different faces, will struggle and make mistakes. Note that we don't think supermarkets have the money to improve this. Even this Israeli government, which receives billions from the US, cannot perfect this. That means that the harms are so much more amplified under their side of the house, in the sense that they cannot have this 10%, which is bad in the best case scenario, and that's used by a military system. Secondly, when this technology is reliant upon facial features, an offender can avoid this by simply covering their face, such as by wearing a face mask, rendering this tech useless. This deals with all of the harms that they might try to solve of reducing crime, in the sense that people can very easily avoid it. Thirdly, note that this tech is often developed by coders who are privileged and well off, and that it be not likely to be very specific. Hence, may misidentify certain features. This looks like an AI system made in the US, thinking Māori facial tattoos and tāmoko are gang tattoos. Security guards are far less diverse than coders and have local experience, in the sense that they can tell the difference between what it is to have a tāmoko and to be wearing a facial tattoo that is represented with a gang. Fourthly, when a security guard has been notified that an offender is present, they feel pressure to take action. This pressure means that they are far more likely to make mistakes and rely on stereotypes. The outcomes here is we prove that that we get increased racial profiling when we use these systems, and it means that people are far less likely to believe and engage in the institution because it is acted against them. Ultimately, we are able to win this debate if we can prove that our privacy is better and that we bring people to a higher standard. Proud to close.
Someone who started hanging out with what we might say the cooler kids at school. And these cooler kids, they like doing things which the person's not entirely comfortable with, but they think they'll go along just for the fun of it. For instance, these cool people, they shoplift things for fun. Not much, just a little chocolate bar every now and then in this. But this all adds up to some chocolate which they're getting for free every year because they're managing to sneak it out, because no one is catching and recognising them. Realistically, if they see a notice that supermarkets are bringing in a new facial recognition thing which will recognise people who have committed crimes, and they realise it's going to be harder for them to steal chocolate bars, they are not going to steal chocolate bars anymore, because they can spend a few dollars on a chocolate bar and avoid the stain on their reputation. As first speaker of the negating team, I'd like to go over a small amount of rebuttal for the first speaker of the affirming team before moving on to our two main points, that this is going to deter shoplifting, and also that this is not an encroachment of privacy at all. Okay, so first of all, the first speaker of the affirming team said that they're going to use a mixture of humans and basic technology to stop people from shoplifting, so employ more people in roles like this. This actually costs more than this technology which we're getting which we're bringing in, because realistically the long-term cost of people not shoplifting is going to outweigh the cost of implementing this system, whereas in their system they are just employing more people year after year after year, which is going to stack up to heaps of money. They also mentioned lots about how data is going to be shared everywhere and people are going to lose their privacy. Well, we've decided that realistically, the supermarkets aren't going to share this data everywhere. They're going to have a database in their computers and system of faces that will be recognised by the technology. They're not going to be sharing all this information around about your interactions, your face. It's just facial recognition technology. Also, we believe it's insane to compare this to Hamas, because this is going to be checked by people. That it's not going to identify a face and that person is going to be shot and killed immediately. No, this is going to be checked by people if the system recognises that someone who was shoplifted before has entered the store. They also mentioned a small point about the fact that this is going to think that, Māori moko are gang members' tattoos. This is not realistic. We're looking at the faces of people who have stolen and matching it to people who enter the store. We're not thinking about what people could steal from a store. So moving on to our main point, that this is going to deter shoplifting. So obviously when I get it out, obviously what we've got at the moment is good, but it's not working. It's not automatic, it's tricky to use, and not overly efficient. People are still shoplifting heaps. This facial recognition is going to recognise people that are repeat offenders and stop them from doing this. On this point, the facial recognition technology that they use will be publicised, in the store. It's part of what they have to say they're recording you and that they're using facial recognition technology. No. And we believe that people are going to look at this because whether you remember it or not, you see those CCTV signs. So this is going to have a number of effects on people who would shoplift. It means that people who are thinking of shoplifting will most likely be deterred because they know that their face will be stored in the memory if they when they get caught shoplifting, and they're going to be noticed and caught next time they go into the store. Also, people who already shoplift, this will probably have one of two effects. They will either find themselves stopping shoplifting for the fear of being caught because this is greater and no one wants to have that criminal record or be fined for it, or they're going to start going to other stores. We believe that this in turn will force other stores to use this technology, as the other team recognise, and this can only be a greater all-round benefit. All stores are going to be catching these criminals. So therefore, this means in our world, those who do shoplift will get caught, and those who are maybe thinking of shoplifting will be deterred because they don't want to get caught. And this is an ideal world where we're stopping people from shoplifting. Why is shoplifting bad? Well, first of all, it's morally wrong. Second of all, this is making businesses struggle. Think of all the little things that people have stolen throughout the year. Think how much that adds up for all the stores across Aotearoa. This is money that is being saved year by year by enforcing this new equipment. We don't want to normalise shoplifting in the culture. We want to show that stores are against it. We want to show that they're working to stop this. Then this will, and not only this, the shops are going to gain more consumers because consumers will view these stores as more safe, less shoplifting, and they'll think, okay, I'll go to this store. And your ordinary consumer knows they have nothing to fear because they have not stolen. It's only if you have stolen that you're going to be pinged for it. No. I'd also like to quickly go into the fact that this is not an encroachment of privacy. CCTV is already accepted and signposted by the store and declared. By stepping on the land of the supermarket and by buying things, you're accepting that you agree to this policy and that you're being recorded. No, so people are not having their privacy stolen. Yeah, I'm proud to stand.
I thank the speaker for their speech, and I will now the second speaker of Central North Island.
firstly dealing with all of the material that they've given out so far in this debate, and then I'm going to be splitting on how consumers are going to be facing higher prices under Neg's side of the house. So firstly then, on this big idea of like reducing shoplifting in supermarkets, and note that this is like their big push and how they're probably going to win this debate, so if I can mitigate all of their material enough that they probably can't win this debate. So firstly then, what I want to clarify is why are people shoplifting from supermarkets in the first place? This is because prices are extremely high at the moment. People are extremely struggling with this. People need their food. If people can't afford it in the status quo, so they have to resort to things such as shoplifting and stealing in order to feed themselves and feed their families. It's not because people are like just want to do it to be cool. It's because people are literally desperate. Like, note that the material and like kids stealing chocolate bars to be cool is like not the like shoplifting we're probably dealing with. We're dealing with people having to like sneak out like vegetables and stuff because they can't afford it to feed their families in order to a healthy diet, and they can't like access food banks because food banks are extremely struggling. So then, firstly then on like detecting stuff and deterring shoplifting, what was the material here? Firstly it was like because like people know that they're being recorded, they're going to just like stop going into these shops and they're going to like stop shoplifting. Couple responses here. Firstly, like Tyler already gave you material as to how people could just avoid this facial recognition. Firstly, it's like such as people like wearing masks or wearing coverings that like cover specific parts of their face. This means that the AI facial recognition is probably not likely to pick this up. But also I want to know that like CCTV in supermarkets are just like extremely like bad. They're really grainy. Like if you look up at the screen and count down like at the entrance and you see it, you're like, it's horrible quality. Like the AI is probably not going to pick up on this. Something as intricate as a face, but like something small that's like a dimple or a pimple and stuff like that, it's probably not likely to be picked up by AI. Like AI, unless it's like super good. But like I just want to flag that like it's just really messy under the like recording is just really messy. So then, what does this mean for their point? Firstly, it just means that like a lot of their material about like recognizing and deterring just like is extremely mitigated. This means that they probably can't like follow through.
Point of information.
When on this point, as into the comparative of what we have on our side of the house. Firstly, Tyler told you about like we have just like security guards and basic things. Their only response to this was that like it's going to be more expensive. We tell you that like it's far more expensive on their side of the house to run like an efficient and good AI system. I'll like talk about more of that in my split. But on our side of the house, when we have security guards, we don't have like racial profiling by these AI, because note that like Tyler gave you material here, such as like AI is mostly programmed by like very wealthy white or Asian people, not like people from like minority communities. So there's probably likely to be this ingrained bias into the programming of this AI. This means that like we get more like profiling and stuff. Like this looks like your local like Māori man walking in with like a tamako, and like the AI's just been coded that like all face tattoos that people like part of the
Point of information.
This means that like it's probably going to be far worse. People are going to be alerted and they're probably just going to be escorted out. This creates like massive tensions, right? Like such as like just more like ingrained societal like disrupt and all of that, because people don't feel safe with like people don't feel safe. Note that Tyler gave you analysis as to like how this like impacts people who just feel more paranoid in their daily lives, because people go to the supermarket like once a week at least, but like they interact with the supermarket a lot. Under our side of the house, when we have like security guards and people, like security guards are far more diverse and they're more connected with their community. They're likely not to have this like same level of bias that these AI systems already have. This is because they can see them up close. But also, this like continues onto my material of how like cameras are just really bad quality, because you can actually like see them up close in person. If you have like a picture of someone who's like who was on the shoplifting list, you may be able to recognize them far better than the AI system that currently exists. That is really beneficial as you're able to target them better. Okay, I'll take it here now.
Who says security guards are not being phased out under our side of the house?
I don't think anyone has ever said that in this debate. I was just moving on to this next point about like privacy of people. Note that like their own big like push out here for privacy is that like people consent to like CCTV already, and that means like AI is going to be like perfectly fine with people. Note that there is like a massive difference between like being on CCTV footage and having your face literally recognized by AI imagery. Like this creates like a lot of problems in a person. Like no one wants their face to be like completely put into a system with like where the AI is just there. Like people don't feel very safe with that information, and also that information may be leaked. Tyler gave you some material as to like how that is leaked through like companies selling it to like advertising companies such as social media. But I also want to know that like hacking and like breaches of data are like massive issues that we see currently. Like for example, take a look at like the time that data was breached in the system like in the Department of like firearms, where like the data of people who owned these like powerful, harmful rifles was breached. Supermarkets are likely not to have the same security and level as like a government organization. Therefore, that means like these things are likely to be hacked far more easily and get their information leaks. This is really harmful because having your information leaked online and sold on like the black market and stuff means that your faces can be used anywhere without your consent. This is this is horrible just because it's a massive encroachment on privacy. They need to deal with all of this material in order to like able to mitigate it. And like ultimately we can win on that point as well. So then onto my split on how like these supermarkets are likely to charge more higher exorbitant prices to these people. Context, what is really important to know at the beginning of this point is that consumers in New Zealand are currently facing massive high prices. This looks like your average grocery bill being like $200 or like hundreds of dollars more depending on the size of your family and who you're feeding. So here's why the cost for consumers is likely to rise. Firstly, there's a massive cost that already exists in investing in AI. Note that like it's in trial stages right now. They're probably wanting to expand it and they want to make it better. This means that they're going to have to invest more money into this, which means that they're going to have to pay a lot more. Secondly, that supermarkets can push on this cost to people whether they need to or not. They can charge them higher prices for their goods for consumers to buy, and they can suddenly just have the idea of like, oh, we really need to charge more because we need to like forward our AI system to make you like feel more secure in this thing. Like supermarkets are just going to try and appear as benevolent as possible when they raise these prices. And then thirdly, like supermarkets can use this like uniquely. They can use this AI to detect like what people are buying a lot. Then they can probably use this to like charge higher prices for this. But also fourthly, consumers have no real like different choices. Like New World and Pack and Save together, like owned by Foodstuff, probably have like 60% of market share in New Zealand for the supermarket. This means that like they're probably likely to charge higher prices. People don't have another choice to go to, and Countdown is probably likely to charge higher prices as well because they've got that duopoly power and they can charge more. What do we prove at the end of this point? Firstly, we just like prove that there's just higher prices for consumers. Impacts. Note that this like impacts like the scale of this impact is incredibly high, as literally everyone goes to the supermarket. Everyone goes there on a daily basis, whether you're like a family household of 5 people or just like a struggling university student who needs to like feed themselves. This is when prices are so increased, this harms those like vulnerable people, like low socioeconomic families or struggling uni students who like every dollar counts, right? Like even if you're being like charged an extra $20 at your grocery store, that is literally like 1 hour's worth of work that you're probably going to have to pay away. People are struggling already, and what this may lead to is more people having to shoplift and increase their stuff because they just simply can't afford it. That means that shoplifting actually comes far more harmful under their scale. Thank you.
I hate speakers to the pitch. No, that wasn't up. These are speakers, thousands.
How can you oppose facial recognition software and this implementation in supermarkets when all I can think of is positive benefits and the positive outcomes of this? So, I'm going to touch on a couple split points further on, and then I'm going to hit some rebuttal prior to that. So my split points are going to be, I'm going to reinforce Natalie's argument regarding reduction and deterioration of shoplifting crime and the absolute flow-on effects, positive flow-on effects of that. Then I'm going to touch on the miscarriage of justice and how justice works in New Zealand, because it seems like this side of the house thinks that it's okay for shoplifters to run around empty-handed, when at the end of the day it is about people needing to be caught. Then I'm going to talk about how consumers are more likely to come to a store and spend more. their argument, they like to talk about how it's going to, consumers are going to end up being to cost more when that doesn't make sense. Okay, now on to my first bit of rebuttal I just want to talk about here. They keep coming back to this whole argument of targeting minority groups, but it doesn't matter if you're a minority if you are being recognised for real shoplifting. Our counter model suggests, that they would be picked up for stealing. We are in a trial phase, I would like it known. We are in a trial phase, meaning that AI software is likely to be new. So, shoplifting is a crime that someone is going to commit and they need to be held accountable for. This is the current status quo model, and currently in New Zealand we are seeing crime run rampant. As a current student, I know the struggles of crime. I understand going to a supermarket on the daily, and I see the peer pressure in and amongst my peer group to steal. It does exist, and if this team over here, the affirming side, want to agree, then okay, here we go. Next up, I just want to talk about, they're trying to bring race baiting into the argument. Race baiting, it's not needed, it's truly unnecessary in this. We're talking about facial recognition software, we are not talking about race. Now, I just want to suggest something here. Why would someone steal when your face is in the system? Here we go. You are only guilty if you fear justice. Only the guilty fear justice. Just let that sink in for a moment here. Justice is key in New Zealand, and we need to carry that up. We've just been at the Supreme Court and we saw the absolute high honours of justice. Now, if we are able to catch these people, which our counter model suggests we are able to catch these thieves, we can then prove that justice is effective, justice is carried out, and more importantly, that there is effective sentencing and effective but not and quick sentencing that is carried out. I'll take the POI.
Okay, if your analysis as to why people are shoplifting and that they're literally struggling to feed themselves, how does any of your material interact with that?
My material makes complete sense with regards to families trying to feed themselves, because we're talking about, are you trying to morally suggest the affirming side that shoplifting is okay if you're poor? Are you trying to suggest that? Because that's simply what's being put out here. Shoplifting, at the end of the day, is morally wrong, and to think that you can come out and steal just because you need a little bit of stuff to get by. If everyone went out and did that, I would love to go out and steal stuff, but morally it's wrong, and if families want to go out and survive, there are counter models for that. There are alternatives for this. Food banks, although they did argue that it is, they're currently facing a lot of strife, and they're currently not as economically viable, then there are other solutions for that. You can also go reach out to other close family members and friends that are able to come through. So this kind of moral argument with regards to the fact that they're only stealing for the thrill of it is just not true. We don't want to normalise, our counter model suggests that we don't want to normalise stealing and this sort of behaviour, as this has heaps of negative flow-on effects in our society, right? If you start getting into that kind of cycle, rehabilitation, how do you get out of that cycle of being caught up in the courts and the court system in New Zealand? Our model suggests that by implementing facial recognition software, we would see these benefits. Okay, I'm going to come on to my main split point now, with regards to the positive flow-on effects, although Natalie did touch on it earlier. So, for starters, as soon as you implement an AI system or a facial recognition system into the system, you are going to see a lot of positive benefits. First of all, there will be an increase in stock. Think about that. They don't really like to touch on that, but say there's not as much stock being stolen, we're going to see more chocolate bars on the shelf. We're going to see more lettuces and vegetables on the shelf. The positive benefits that come from this sort of stuff are huge. It means that farmers aren't going to be caught out in as much struggle in their farmland. We're not going to have to spend as much on water and as much on infrastructure out in our farmlands. Stock holders in these sort of businesses aren't going to be pinched to the absolute death. Next up is the fact that it flows on from that, and it's also better for the business as a whole. Foodstuffs, as they argued, sure we'll say it is around over a majority sharehold in the New Zealand food market, with the other giants like Woolworths. They are a large giant in the sort of scheme of things for that. And it means that they are going to be able to make a little bit more profit off the end of that in our counter model. No thanks. They're going to be able to make a bit more money off the end of that. Which means they can put that into staffing. What does staffing lead to? Jobs. What is jobs? What happens after you have a job? It means you can feed your family. It means you can pay your rent. It means you can have all of these issues, which the affirming side talked about, and improve them. Next up, it means that there will be more money for the staff. More money for staff, as I said, more money for the economy. GDP grows. I am only seeing positive effects. Positive, positive, positive. I will take the POI now.
Supermarkets are making billions in profits. How does like a few chocolate bars being stolen actually impact that?
A few chocolate bars being stolen. Well, let's look at petty crime, right? Petty crime, that's one person taking it, that leads to another person taking it, that leads to another person taking it. Your argument that petty crime isn't actually implicating it kind of seems a bit unreasonable when at the end of the day, there is an absolute load of stuff being stolen, and your argument that not having this deterioration of crime means that we're going to have more theft, which means that supermarkets...
On that point,
yeah, I'll take another one, yeah.
how do you claim that you get more money for staff if you have to pay more to engage with these forms of AI security systems that you use?
Very good, very nice one there. For starters, we are arguing here the implementation of an AI and facial recognition system, right? Facial recognition system immediately implemented. Sure, it might cost a little bit. There's a bit of capital investment in there. But all I'm seeing from this is positive benefits down here in terms of reducing the actual cost implications, the cost per customer, the cost per consumer, you would argue. And that's leading on from there. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of you guys might try and heard of the statement called, when the lion is hungry, he will eat. That means that he will go to the store. He needs to go to the store to get food. Okay, now he's all of a sudden come in. He's met with an AI system. Oh no, I'm not going to steal. He's going to be deterred. He ain't coming back. He might go to another store. Which means there will be positive benefits from that. The cost for the consumers will eventually decrease, and we have proven that in our counter model. Finally, I just want to end on one thing regarding the whole mask wearing inside a store. If you're wearing a mask, so the in-store security guard's immediately going to think that's suspicious. The CCTV is going to think it's suspicious. They're going to call you up for that. Try to stand. Try to affirm.
I thank the speaker for this speech, and I now want to ask, is the if you're ready.
Yeah. When even the AI systems of the Israeli government are unable to accurately identify people's faces, we think those of the supermarket are unlikely to be effective in any way and will not lead to the massive benefits they claim. 3 things I'm going to be doing for you in today's speech. Firstly, looking at which side actively gets better effectiveness in reducing shoplifting. Secondly, on the point of privacy, and finally on racial profiling and how this gets worse under their side of the house. So firstly, on the effective, and note that we think we can win on either effectiveness or privacy, but I'm going to start with effectiveness, as this is where they have based the majority of their case. And what we've heard from them is 2 main thrusts on how they think they can reduce shoplifting in general. Firstly, that AI will act as a deterrent, and secondly, it will actively improve the catching of shoplifters. So firstly, on a deterrent, we heard this example at first about how school kids won't shoplift because they're scared of AI. 2 responses here. Note firstly that their characterization of shoplifters is entirely inaccurate. We tell tell you that the majority of shoplifters are not cocky school kids who are doing it because, they think it's really cool. We tell you that they are families who are struggling and cannot afford to feed their kids. We heard from the second speaker that it's still morally unjust for these people to shoplift. We tell you this is still true on either side of the house, but when they are not able to effectively fix the root causes, such as the high grocery prices, which Nathan told you are going to be worsening under their side of the house, we tell you that these people have no real incentive to shoplift, to not shoplift when the choice is between feeding their family and going hungry. At the end of the day, we don't think these people are going to stop, especially when on either side of the house it's still a criminal charge. So clearly this deterrent is not effective. Secondly, we tell you that people are much more likely to be deterred when there is a security guard actively looking out for you rather than just some vague computer in the distance.
Point of information.
Secondly, so we've already approved, so what I've approved here is that it's not going to be an effective deterrent. You're not just going to get lower rates of shoplifting. And secondly, on why we think shoplifters are actually still not going to likely to be caught, note that despite what we heard at second, we have had no model on how criminals are identified in the first place and how this is then fed into the AI system. However, we think this is likely to be done in two ways. Firstly, it could be done by AI, which we already have told you is very likely to make mistakes. And secondly, it could be done in person. In this case, we think it's far better just to have in-person people doing this identification and in-person people doing it rather than this mix. We prefer that on our side of the house. So firstly, on we've given you a number of reasons of why we don't think this is effective. Firstly, we had the example of criminals could just wear a face mask. We heard from them, you're just gonna get stopped by a security guard. We tell you that in our current world, face masks have been normalised with the use of COVID-19, so we don't think they're likely to be stopped by that. And secondly, note that certain ethnic groups and religions, such as Muslim women, tend to wear veils covering their faces. We think at the point in which they're being told to take them off, this is a direct attack on religious freedom and extremely harmful. We tell you that gets worse on their side of the house when you're specifically relying on a person's face. And secondly then, we've already given you all this content on how these AI systems are really bad quality and they're simply not going to work. Again, we've had no response as to how they're going to magically fix these AI systems so they're actually effective. For example, we've already given you the example of when the best facial ID systems in the world are ineffective, we don't think that these supermarkets could improve them. We heard at their first speaker that there's different stakes with Hamas, you just push the button and fire. We tell you that when these stakes are so much higher than people literally getting killed and they're still getting it wrong, we don't think supermarkets can do a better job. So what we've clearly identified at the end of this point is that this facial technology is not going to improve the risk of the chances of catching criminals. Alternatively, on our side of the house, we tell you when security guards are not reliant upon AI and are actively looking for people, we tell you that is when they're far more likely to identify actual shoplifters and get it right. I'll take your point now.
If these technologies employed overseas have a high margin of risk, do you not think that the margin of error is far better when there's a lower risk and implication when someone's caught compared to a missile strike on someone?
I'm not quite sure what you're getting at there, but what we were using with this example of the Israeli defense system is that even when these are the most well-developed AI facial recognition systems in the world and they still get it wrong, we don't think a supermarket can do better or has the money to invest more than that. So we don't think they're going to be able to make these effective. Also, we've given you a number of other reasons why we don't think this is true. So yeah, at the end of this point, we think we've managed to take down their entire case when we've proven that they don't get reduced shoplifting. And then secondly, on privacy, which is a push that and the only push we've heard back from this is that people are, that's the same as CCTV footage. We have a number of reasons why we think that using AI and CCTV are not comparable. Firstly, we tell you that CCTV is likely going to be deleted after a while, whereas we tell you that AI information is going to be actively stored in a database that will be available to a lot of people. We think these systems might only be effective when they're nationwide, otherwise someone can just go to another store. So that means that when these are nationwide databases, your face is going to be shared to a lot of people. We think people just hate the idea of that, and that makes them really scared, more likely to lose trust in the government. And secondly, we know that these target your face specifically. They're not looking for target your face specifically and stores your face. Again, people are going to not hate this idea. We tell you that, this is a massive violation of your privacy when there's like a random supermarket somewhere that has your face on record, and we think that this is just not a right that should be breached in New Zealand. And also, most importantly, people cannot consent to using this tech. They cannot opt in or out. Because what's the alternative? Not go to a supermarket? We tell you that's simply not an option. At the point in which people have no choice in their privacy being breached, we tell you this is morally reprehensible, and this alone is enough to win us the debate. And furthermore, we've told you about the risks such as hacking and leaking. Look, and we've heard no response as to why people might not do this on their side of the house. Note that there is a profit incentive for people to get your face, sell your data, which is why this is likely to increase. We also tell you supermarkets are likely to do this. We've heard, this is a cry. Firstly, note that supermarkets, they have a massive duopoly. They're often kind of breaking rules anyway. They also have a profit incentive that both teams have agreed on. When they sell your data to an advertising company, they can figure out how to target their stuff better, so you spend more money there. So they definitely have reasons to sell this on or pass this on. So at the end of this point, I think we've clearly been able to prove that privacy is breached, and we think again this is enough to win us the debate on its own. But finally, on racial profiling, note that we don't really think that some of our specific mecs, including the increased pressure of a security guard to catch a criminal when they know it's in the store, have been responded to. So, and the only push we've heard there, was when someone is a minority, it doesn't matter if they're minority or not, they deserve to get caught. No, we've already explained to you why it's not likely to catch you, or why it's likely to make mistakes in the first place. The specific analysis we're trying to tell you here is that AI systems, which are often not specific to a region, they're more likely to be coded in America, are likely to specifically make mistakes based on race. This leads to people and minorities getting unfairly targeted because these systems are biased and designed to identify them as shoplifting when they're not. Clearly, we also tell you on our side of the house is when people who are not shoplifting are targeted, this is a miscarriage of justice, and we tell you that gets far worse. At the end of the day, these groups are vulnerable. We tell you that protecting them and stopping stereotypes getting worse is a really important thing. Thank you.
Thanks for the speech, and I will be third for your Southland to conclude the substantive portion of the debate. Can I just double check, because I forgot to ask at the start, who's doing leaders on both these? Leaders? Good to know. Thanks, Ed. Yeah, the drill.
Ladies and gentlemen, fundamental incoherence of the implementation of this policy has all but been the characterisation of the opposing team's argument tonight at this debate. We have seen commonly a number of collusion and contradictions, while we have seen our argument is the clear and obvious, even if it may not have been explained in such a depth in some cases, we see it as the most obvious and likely choice for both supermarkets and for the greater implications of New Zealand society. And I will develop this by debating the clash points here today and why, and with the argument we stand, why we have won effectively each clash point of the debate. These being the main clash point being the effectiveness of the mechanism, in this case being the method of AI recognition software as described by the information slide. The second clash point being consumer prices and impoverishment, and also with a minor point on the types of characterising the actor of shoplifters in New Zealand, and thirdly being the individual's right to privacy. Yeah, g'day.
What exactly is the miscarriage of justice that you've been telling me down?
I don't know, but maybe you could tell me, because your third speaker irritated it severely throughout our case, Mr. Speaker. I would like to go over the fact the miscarriage of justice really has no implication to this debate, but I'd like to say your team has used it several times because you've said, well, something along the lines of, well, the technology is going to be ineffective, yet we don't see it as reducing shoplifting. And what we have seen, we've seen no argument proving against, is no argument against the social benefit of the deterrence of shoplifting, and this would tie in immensely well with my second clash point on consumer prices, on the finances and availability for consumers in this market that we see here. what has characterised this debate between both teams, what provides the better outcome for the main stakeholder in the New Zealand foods consumer, whether it's an impoverished family, a struggling university student, or just the general consumer at large? We see on our side of the house that while there may be a capital and infrastructural cost associated with the implementation of this technology, while when it's first implemented there may be an immense cost, over time as this technology is improved and innovated, the cost for this will decrease as people become more familiarised, but we see retail cost as a great implication of why food prices in New Zealand have been increasing for years. The market structure of the foods and groceries industry, name me one aspect of how it's changed significantly over the last 20 years. It has not significantly changed. It's still been the Foodstuffs Cooperative Group and the Progressive Enterprises or Woolworths Group. There has not, one of the main reasons for excessive rises apart from international factors has been retail crimes as being referred to by the New Zealand Grocery Commission and other groups. It is retail crime that is causing a surge, as previously explained, as stock units are taken, meaning potential units are not able to be, one, supplied to consumers, meaning food resources become increasingly more scarce, and that potential profitability is lost, meaning that firms will then decrease production and decrease the amount of units produced and the amount of units bought from wholesalers and subsequently farmers, which will reduce positive economic effects for the wider grocery sector when you examine it on a cross-industrial basis, which hasn't been examined. And while this may be a marginal benefit, it will still provide even a significant reduction, even if it's in one or two local areas as a supermarket operates, as they'll increase their production levels, as they're able to retain more stock that would otherwise be lost. So yes, petty shoplifting, maybe a few chocolate bars, but if you look at that across the whole country, if you say it's a few chocolate bars, or maybe a few whatever the stock unit is being taken from these supermarkets, this has clearly had a significant effect that's unparalleled to just a few things being taken. And this is why I would like to stand that we have fundamentally won the point on lowering consumer prices. Their economic logic has been faulty at best. They haven't provided any real reason as to why, other than a high infrastructural cost, will increase this. They've also said that...
On that,
yeah, I'll take that point of information.
when we've given you all these mechanisms about why this AI technology is faulty, what is your response to why you think it would be effective in stopping crime?
That had nothing to do with what I was going to say, but it is going to be what I speak on now. One of the reasons we believe the technology may be faulty, one of the points scattered throughout their argument was the IDF in Israel has an immensely ineffective service of AI that's resulted in masses of people being killed. An ineffective or a malfunction in AI technology in a New Zealand supermarket might result in someone being pulled up incorrectly and may result in them having to return something or being let go. In an international affair, that might be a village of people being killed. We see correspondingly, lest this might be true, name me one system that can be implemented, even if it is security guards that might racially profile people or people that may miss potential shoplifters. Name me one system that has the absolute effectiveness in solving any problem in any international scale, because I tell you, you cannot tonight. And you will never find anything with true effectiveness in solving any problem. There's always going to be a margin of error, but it really comes down to what provides the greatest benefit, what provides the best social collateral for everyone involved. And this is why we believe, and why I can conclude, that the effects of this, well, there might be minor implications of things such as privacy, which is previously mentioned. Take, for example, cell phones. They're commonly used. I would argue, for example, that there are far greater implications to consumer privacy, such as the use of AI by, no thank you, AI by, say, district councils and upgrading circuit television footage. We believe this is only, as previously mentioned, a logical extension of existing processes of surveillance and crime reduction already employed by supermarkets and other retail stores in the existing market, such as the previous use of circuit television throughout the 1990s, or even the regular employment of security guards throughout the COVID-19 era as deterrents. We don't believe that this is really anything more strenuous. As they've said, well, not everyone's going to read the signposting at the door. My response to this is, well, tough luck. You chose not to obey the immense legal conditions set forth by the supermarkets. You struggle with the consequences. No, thank you, I won't take that PO, I'll come back to that. You choose to accept these consequences at the consumer. Governments, and we see this as something parallel across all sides of the house, whether it's related to highly industrialised subsidies or entering the local dairy. The consequences are the same. Yes, legal information is highly extrapolated and uses immense language, but we believe at the end of the day, it's the choice. Once you step foot on the premises, you obey by the conditions of the supermarket. And this is why we believe we won the point on the right to privacy. They mentioned a number of points such as people's fear, distrust in the government, I think that's a completely erroneous point. I don't see any relevance in this. It mentioned that people will be fearful. When mentioned, as my second speaker reiterated, as you'll learn, one of the great lessons from Batman was that only the guilty have fear to justice, have any fear from justice, and this is what we see here. Yes, there may be some profiling and mischaracterised. That's the same thing as some policeman mistaking you for being potentially a drunk driver on the roads. It's going to have a small social implication. It might affect you 30 minutes later. It's not going to have a great implication. We see, I'd also like to touch on the right to privacy. People may distrust the supermarkets. There are still a number of alternatives, as they haven't mentioned, such as, say, local dairies, the night and day group, even wholesale markets. There are a number of other alternatives simply that exist, even though they do have a large duopolised effect on the current groceries market. What I would like to mention now as I conclude my substantive case has been the main flashpoint of this debate. It's been the effectiveness of the mechanism. They've brought a contorted argument. The mechanism is not going to be effective here. It might racially profile some person in the North Island because of a cultural tattoo. But what we believe is that while this may occur, we have shown why the effects severely outweigh the negative implications of this. And this is why we believe I can conclude that we've been victorious in this debate. Thank you.
Right, my next speaker for this speech is the traditional and now reverse speaking order, and is our first speaker of the
Alright, I'd like to first go over what the main crux of this debate is, what we've been trying to prove before comparing the two cases and reiterating our case and why exactly we've won. So first of all, what we're mainly trying to prove in this debate is that on our side of the house, we can stop lower shoplifting, and we can do it in a safe way. This is what both teams have been trying to show that they can do. The affirming team have not provided an alternative way and have kept the world as the status quo. Instead, they've picked apart our model mainly, saying that this, and picking apart this facial recognition technology. They've said that it's going to undermine public privacy, they've said that it's ineffective, and they've said that it will cost the consumer more. We believe that the most heavy issue in this debate is really its effectiveness, although its privacy has been extremely important too. Some of their points about public privacy, they said that it will target minority people. We've come at this again and again saying that your race is irrelevant, it's about whether you've done a crime or not. They've also had all these concerns about security, faces monitored, nationwide security leaks. This is not going to happen. This is just going to be used by supermarkets to stop shoplifters. This is not going to be a black market selling faces or a leak of national security, because realistically this is no different from the already pre-existing CCTV footage. You already have videos of your faces, and people are fine with that as a general rule. They've also mentioned that it leads to mistrust of the supermarkets, whereas realistically only the shoplifters have something to fear. The rest of the people know that shoplifting is going to be stopped. Now, moving on to their point, they said that this is ineffective. For instance, one of the things that seems to come out under this is they've been saying, but poor people, they can't afford food. They're needing to shoplift to afford food. It's immoral to steal anyway. That's the baseline. We can't just let poor people slip through our fingers for shoplifting, because first of all, we even draw the line at poor, and you have to be consistent with your case. Just because we're tightening up on security doesn't mean you can worry about the poor people who were stealing. There are already, as my other speakers mentioned, there's other ways for poorer people to get food. So we believe we've won this point, and that it wasn't relevant to this at all. They've also had their concerns about the effectiveness of this, and as has been brought up, nothing is 100% perfect. But this, on this side of the house, this is better than what they've said, which I'll come into later. And besides, we aren't completely removing people from the process. We are we're not just going to let the AI recognise something and say, oh no, you've stolen, and arrest them straight away. No, there's going to be a way of doing this that will involve it being checked before it goes live. And so I'd like to say that we've proven that this system is effective and that it does not undermine your privacy. Just moving on to the fact that they've stated this is going to cost the consumer more because supermarkets will have to raise prices in order to do this. This is a capital investment. This is an asset that's going to help them in the long run because less of their revenue is going to be stolen. Prices are not going to have to be raised. And actually, on their side of the house, it costs more. They have to hire more security guards. And this is going to be ineffective anyway because people have been trying this for ages. We need something new. So in conclusion, we've shown that we can deter shoplifting by making it easier for them to be caught and that this can be done while ensuring that a person's privacy is kept intact. And I believe we've won.
Alright, I thank you for the speech and I welcome the first speaker of the affirming team to conclude this debate once and for all.
Well, sorry, it just says the battery on the laptop is running low.
Oh, if you give it free. Alright, I'll give it a look.
Yeah, you are getting a 2-minute reply. Congratulations.
Please just speak at a normal speed, and if the recording drops out, then it's fine.
Yeah, no one knows how to do this. At least one other string is already cut out before the replies, so.
At the point where people fear being followed around a supermarket because they happen to be wearing a hijab, where this tech had to, which is meant to facially recognise via pixelated cameras that can't actually read the people's faces, and at the point where the people became sceptical of the street statues, the pigeons and the light bulbs, we think that ultimately this form of technology became ineffective. A few key areas of clash in this then. Firstly, does Neg actually deter shoplifting? Secondly, on privacy, and then lastly, on racial profiling. Firstly then, on to this point of does Neg actually deter shoplifting? We gave you substantive material right from the get-go that this tech is underdeveloped. For example, we gave you the IDF using AI systems which have a maximum accuracy of 10% that is backed by billions of dollars in the US, meaning that in the best case scenario, in the most developed situations in the world, they have a a relatively high failure rate when the risks are so high. But also note that we flagged that the reasons that they are this important and that they could get it to this low level of inaccuracy is because of how important it is. Ultimately, under their side of the house, what you're much more likely to see is inaccurate forms of AI reading, in the sense that because it's so much more important that the IDF targets Hamas members accurately, that means that targeting someone who's stealing your candy bar, as they wanted to characterise throughout their case, is much less important, and therefore they have much less incentive to have such a high level of deterrence. But we also told you that they encourage racial biases and that these developers tend to be out of touch with New Zealand society. Ultimately, just flagged that they did have much substantive response to this, and we say that it doesn't, and they said that if it doesn't matter if you're stealing, if you're a minority and you're being targeted, if you're actually stealing. Look, we heard substantively from Southland Neg that these people will only be caught if they're actually committing crime, but this doesn't actually engage with most of the material that we gave you on how they actually engage with racial profiling. More on that later. But we also say that people get scared and are they say that people get scared and are informed by the terms and conditions at the supermarket door so that they won't go and commit crimes. Just flag, this is an assertion. They didn't really give you any mechanism as to how, why people are going to actually read and engage in these terms and conditions. But also, note that we gave you material in first about how they do not have the opt-in, opt-out option, in the sense that everyone has to use the supermarket. So ultimately, why do they not get to reduce shoplifting? Because firstly, the tech is underdeveloped, which means that they get much more inaccuracies, and also because, because they have much less human interaction, there's much more room for error. So that means that we get to take away the point which allows them to win this debate, and we're able to take down most of their points as to how they get a better GDP and all that good stuff, which ultimately they cannot claim if they cannot prove substantively on how they actually reduce shoplifting. Now then, on privacy. We told you that people are stored on a database, they are followed around the store, and they are scared to enter a supermarket because their data will be sold to some other tech company. Note that they said that this taking away of privacy is just an extension on what we see in today's society. But we told you that these companies literally sell data to other companies, in the sense that that's much different to actually watching cameras if you're selling it to other companies who have special interest in the data that you hold. Also, and we say that the privacy, they told you that the privacy violations don't matter if they catch the right person. First, yes, they do matter, in the sense that everyone has the right to privacy. I flagged that in the first part of my speech. But also, secondly, they're much more likely to get the wrong people, which means that you invade on their privacy. Ultimately, because they take away people's ability to protect their privacy, because they make them have less trust in the institutions, they have less privacy, and they lose this debate because they cannot prove to us that they deter crime, which means that they cannot get all of their benefits, and ultimately, they harm privacy. Proud.
And that's our show. Thank you everyone for coming. Go home. Don't go home. Do not go home.